Apple has introduced the iPhone 11's Pro features to iPhone 12 by upgrading the screen to OLED instead of LCD, adding 5G technology and camera improvements, however, at the same time increasing the cost and by saving on excluding the AirPods and charging brick. At Honest Straightforward Reviews, I have reviewed all of Apple's iPhone 12 lineup. Honest Straightforward Reviews iPhone 12 Pro review looks at differences between it and the cheaper model, while the iPhone 12 mini review focuses on the smaller model and also got the biggest baddest iPhone 12 Pro Max review. On top of that, I have viewed the camera and done a camera test and made a review of that as well. I have included the links in the comment, all those reviews. The iPhone 12 is a nice looking phone that takes a lot of inspiration from the iPhone 5 design. The rounded sides and slightly curved display of the iPhone 11 have been replaced with the flat edges and straight lines everywhere, meaning that you will get a clean, well-built and pleasurable phone to use. It's thinner, lighter, smaller and more ergonomic than the outgoing iPhone 11, and the flat sides make it far more comfortable to hold. Everything just works, from the size to weight. It's also a tough phone too, with more durable ceramic shield glass on the front, making it 4 times shatter resistant, and a better IP68 rating for splash, water and dust resistance. Apple now claims it can withstand a maximum depth of 6 meters for 30 minutes. However, it is quite gimmicky as Apple does not cover your iPhone if it's water damaged. The iPhone 12 has the exact same design as the iPhone 12 Pro when it comes to dimensions and screen size, which is useful as if you buy a case for one, it'll work on the other. There are differences. The iPhone 12 Pro has stainless steel rails over the cheap aluminium that is used on the iPhone 12 and noticeably heavier as a result of this. The Pro model also has a frosted back while the 12 has a more glossy finish on the back. It's the opposite on the sides though, as the 12 goes matte and the Pro goes shiny. I got myself a black colored review unit. The black isn't that susceptible to visible fingerprints, which isn't the case if you get the Pro version. The other colors that the iPhone 12 come in are blue, white, green and a product red version. The front of the glass of the iPhone 12 is Apple's new ceramic shield, which is developed in conjunction with cornering from Gorilla Glass frame, and according to Apple is 4 times better at withstanding drops. Apple has added nano ceramic crystals onto the glass, which are said to make it stronger and is combined with previously used dual ion exchange for scratch resistance. Nevertheless, an important fact is that the iPhone isn't any more scratch resistant than the iPhone 11, and often when things become better at withstanding drops, they become more susceptible to other types of damages such as scratches. I have started noticing scratches on mine after 3 months of use. Therefore, it's a good idea to have a screen protector on. Let's move on to screen improvement. The new display is up there with the biggest upgrades this year, and even if you're coming from last year's iPhone 11 or older, not to mention the iPhone 12 screen is also increased to 6.1 inch instead of the 6.8 that you get on the iPhone 11 Pro. If you haven't had an OLED display iPhone, it is something that is quite noticeable, especially when you're using it in dark environments. Apple might have some fantastic LCD displays, but switching to OLED is a long-awaited welcome, and the panel here is nearly as good as the one on the 12 Pro version. Everything is more vivid, has better contrast, and generally more pleasing to the eye. In the dark or night environments, the screen is easier on your eyes as the OLED turns off black areas on your phone, meaning less of that dreaded blue light entering your eyes and disrupting your sleep. Furthermore, the use of OLED means smaller bezels around the display and a thinner display panel. It enables HDR in formats like Dolby Vision and HLG. It's sharper too, now over 1080p, which is higher than the 720p you get on the iPhone 11. Another difference is that the iPhone 12 Pro models get a slightly brighter screen, which gives the whites less of a grey tinge. While this is only noticeable when you have the phones side by side playing SDR, which is standard dynamic range, content on them. Having stated that, they both hit 112 nits according to Apple when playing back HDR content. In my experience, the 6.1 screen is not too big, given given that I am a lover and user of the 4-inch iPhone SE from 2016. It is kind of small and light enough to grip in one hand, but big enough to be happy when you are watching media and playing video games without feeling the screen to be cramped. If you want bigger, you will have to go for the iPhone 12 Pro Max version, which is offering a 6.7-inch screen, but it's a lot more heavier and a lot bigger. Apple has done a fantastic job at catering for all the sizes and leaves Android manufacturers well behind, especially when it comes to performance and efficiency. Let's move on to performance. 5G is a long overdue improvement introduced to the iPhone 12 range. If you are in the US, you will have the mmWave UWB 5G support on networks like Verizon, while in other places like, for example, in UK, you're restricted to the more widespread sub 6 gigahertz band. Annoyingly, it costs the same everywhere in the world, even though the sub 6 gigahertz band costs less to make. It would have been nice for Apple, like Google, for example, did with its Pixel 5 version, to start with a lower price in places that don't have it. It is worth saying right away that even though networks and Apple want you to think 5G is a reasonable upgrade and it justifies to buy this phone just for this reason, I don't think so. It still is only available in small portions of areas and seems like a hit and a miss in terms of speed when you compare it to 4G, especially when you compare it in regards to 4G reliability. Furthermore, 5G really takes a chunk out of your battery life if you're pushing it with the downloads. Apple seems to agree, as it has a feature called Smart 5G, which will bring you back to 4G if it thinks what you're doing doesn't require extra speed. What is 5G? In case you were living in a cave, I believe in the next 2 to 4 years, when 5G is more prevalent, it will be a nicety to have when you're out attending gigs and large sporting events or festivals, to be able to have that fast streaming. Powering the iPhone 12 is a A14 Bionic chip. This is the same chip you'll find powering the new iPad Air, and it is the same technology that is being used in the M1 powered Max. The A14 chip is built on an highly efficient 5 nanometer process and is the reason why the battery life is roughly the same as the iPhone 11, even with the additions of 5G and a bigger, brighter screen. It's fantastic in performance too, beating most Android phones that are about to come, not to mention the Android phones that are already out. I ran some CPU benchmarks and got multiple scores of 3927 for the multi-core and a single core score of 1590. A lot of the power from the chip is used to enable Dolby Vision, recording and AI elements in the camera. The more powerful chip isn't just there to make your home screen flow faster and games to load a lot quicker. So you might not notice a big difference, but it's doing a lot in the background. In general, day-to-day performance, the iPhone 12 is crisp, and while it is just as nippy as the Pro. However, I don't think you will notice much difference unless if you are upgrading from a really old iPhone, like me, rocking the iPhone SE from 2016. Apple, after their battery gate issues, is ensuring that iPhones stay fast, and this is no difference with the iPhone 12 lineup. The only difference in terms of specs between the iPhone 12 and the Pro lineups is that the latter has a bit more RAM with 6 gigs as opposed to 4 gigs. You might not notice much of a difference between the gigs. However, you will notice it if you're opening really big apps like games that use a lot of power and you're going in between them, and you'll notice that they won't be closing on you all the time. You will also get 128 gig storage standard for the Pro as opposed to the 64 gig which you get with the 12. Audio from the speakers are great. They're loud, they're detailed, and without distortion, even at loud volume. Call quality is strong, and there's Wi-Fi 6 support if you have the right router. Wi-Fi 6 is what makes the iPhone iPhone future-proof. Let's move on to the camera. The iPhone 12 has seen some upgrades over its predecessor when it comes to low light shooting, but generally the photos I've taken look very much like those taken from an iPhone 11 series. That's not a bad thing though. The main 12 megapixel camera now has a faster aperture of 1.6 7-element lens, and it is paired with a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera too. If you want the telephoto and the LiDAR sensor, you'll have to fork out a lot more to buy the iPhone 12 Pro, as they are locked to the Pro version. The smart HDR3 and deep fusion tech inside the camera app does a stunning job at leveling out colors and dynamic range. It does an almost unmatched job of ensuring exposure is correct in every photo. If you're taking tricky shots with multiple levels of brightness, then the iPhone can handle it with ease. However, iPhones have always struggled with noise in low light, especially when it is compared to photos out of a Samsung phone. This fact doesn't change with the iPhone 12. Even with the Pros with the LiDAR sensor, they struggle, especially on the ultra-wide lens with noise. The f1.6 aperture helps in darker scenarios. It lets in about 27% more light into the sensor. I found photos in these situations where the dedicated night mode hasn't kicked in or I've turned it off to be a tiny bit sharper and the colors to be a little bit better and the highlights are a bit reduced than the iPhone 12 and older. And I've found it to be a really good addition when comparing to older iPhones such as the iPhone XS and older. As I would guess most people are upgrading from a 2 or a 3-year old phone. Furthermore, the iPhone 12 improves photos by having night mode and deep fusion working across both sensors. This is supposed to improve night mode photos when taken with the ultra wide lens. However, unfortunately, this doesn't translate as the shots are really bad, and I believe it's just down to the sensor being of a poor quality. Night mode on the main lens is really good, especially if you're coming from an iPhone XS and older, while over the iPhone 11 Pro, it is a little bit noticeable as it's a bit brighter. The front camera is the same as before. It's a 12 megapixel sensor with an 2.2 aperture, and it's used mainly for Face ID unlocking system. Selfies are fine, but they look a bit washed out and are a bit flat when you compare it to selfies from phones like the Google Pixel 5. I feel like taking good videos have always been a strong point for iPhones. With the iPhone 12, things are looking to improve once again with the introduction of HDR video recording and Dolby Vision. This is done at 30 frames per second at 4K. What is HDR? HDR gives you better contrast, brighter colors, and overall pleasant looking photos and videos. HDR video is recorded in an HLG format with some Dolby Vision encoding on top. That's beside the point though, as the results are stunning, and especially when you're viewing it on a HDR screen such as the iPhone 12. Colors pop out, skies stand out, and everything is really noticeable, especially when you go back use an iPhone 11 or older phones. However, when you're sharing a video that is taken in HDR on an iPhone 12 and you share it with older iPhones, they look very bright and washed out and super confusing. Let's move on to battery. The 2850 milliamp battery, which is the same on the iPhone 12 and 12 Pro, gives me enough juice to last me for about 2 days, which is not less than the iPhone 11, and that's very impressive, especially given how much more work the camera and the screen are doing on the iPhone 12. The lack of improvement might annoy some, and this remains a phone you will most likely be charging every 2 days. I personally get about 2 days of use out of it, which is the same as the iPhone 12 Pro. However, an hour of HDR streaming on Netflix eats away at about 8% of my battery. This is due to the high 12 nit brightness that the iPhone 12 puts out for HDR video playback. Now, there are some caveats here. Due to the current situation with COVID, I am stuck inside where I have access to Wi-Fi and I'm not using my mobile phone's data. Upon testing, when I have access to Telstra's 5G network and I'm watching videos that are HDR, the battery dies a lot quicker. Therefore, I believe 5G alone shouldn't be a reason for you to upgrade, as the technology isn't there yet. The biggest gripe that I have with Apple regarding its iPhone 12 lineup is to do with with the fact that they took out the charging brick and ear pod. They have included a USB-C cable, which is great. However, you will need to pay more for a MagSafe charger that could have been included for free. Furthermore, the USB-C cable will not work with charging bricks from an iPhone XS and older. You would need to fork out more for that. Also, if as a company you're encouraging people to reuse a charger from an older iPhone, then they're going to be suffering from seriously slow charging speeds. iPhone XS and older phones had a 5-watt charging brick, which takes over 3 hours to charge this phone, while a 20-watt charging brick takes about 1.5 hours, which is less than half the time. Realistically, you're going to want to buy a 20-watt charging plug to use with this phone. That is another expense on top of an already expensive device. Furthermore, you'll also need one of the 20-watt chargers if you want to use the new MagSafe charger, a $70 magnetic wireless charger that's part of the new range of add-ons that Apple has introduced with the iPhone 12. What it does, it uses magnets, NFC and Qi standard to charge your iPhone 12 at 15 watts, giving you about 50% in an hour. iPhone 12 will, however, still work with the Qi chargers, but at speeds capped at 7.5 watts Vedic time. The iPhone 12 is a noticeable jump for Apple's main phone, and with the new design, finally might entice people with older iPhones to upgrade. For a starting price of $13.49, it would be a good upgrade. The screen is great, but very disappointing that Apple didn't introduce ProMotion, which is what the iPads have, where the refresh rate is at 120 Hz, which is really good for your eyes and takes fatigue out, whereas these ones are still stuck at 60 Hz. With the new design, improved camera, inclusion of 5G, HDR, video recording and playback, and all the benefits of using Apple's ecosystem and MagSafe, now feels like the right time to consider an upgrade if you have anything older than an iPhone XS. Alright guys, so if you want to see more videos and support the channel and you like this video, please give me a like, thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also check out my Twitter, Instagram and Patreon accounts. That helps a lot if you follow them and contribute there. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.